Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As Chairman of the Board of Directors of the company, I welcome you all to the third annual general meeting of shareholders of African Rainbow Capital Investments Limited. I've been informed by the company's secretary that we have a quorum and the meeting is duly constituted. Notice of this meeting has been given in terms of the Constitution and the Mauritius Companies Act. In terms of proceedings, pursuant to clause 17 of Schedule 3 of the Constitution, I determine that the voting in respect to this meeting shall proceed by way of a poll. Such poll voting shall be conducted entirely electronically as contemplated with the 5th schedule of the Mauritius Companies Act 2001 and Section 7 of Schedule 3 of the Constitution of this company, through the electronic online facility provided by the transfer secretaries of the company, being Computershare. For the purposes of the poll, I nominate a representative of the transfer secretaries present at this meeting to act as scrutineers. I will now open the voting on the electronic online facility, and voting can be performed at any time during the meeting until I close the voting on the resolutions. You will still be able to send messages and view the webcast while the poll is open, and I will allow any questions pursuant to the motions to be discussed after I have tabled the last resolution on the agenda. In this respect, please submit your questions via the electronic platform now. I will now deal with each of the resolutions in turn. Ordinary Resolution 1, first item on the agenda, is to consider and approve the audited financial statements of the company for the year ended 30 June 2020. I propose that the audited financial statements of the company, including the Director's Report, the Audit and Risk Committee Report, and the report of the South African Independent Auditor for the year ended 30 June 2020 be approved and adopted. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect of Ordinary Resolution 1. Ordinary Resolution 2.2, the second item on the agenda, is to elect myself, who is retiring as Director, in accordance with clause 18.3 and 18.9 of the Constitution. I, being eligible and available, offer myself for re-election as Director. My CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11 of the notice. The Nomination and Remuneration Committee has considered my reappointment and it recommends it. I therefore propose that I be re-elected as a Director. We now complete your electronic voting in respect of Ordinary Resolution 2.1. The third item on the agenda, Ordinary Resolution 2.2, is to elect Dr. Mokata, who is retiring as Director in accordance with clause 18.3 and 18.9. Dr. Mokata, being eligible and available, offers herself for re-election as Director. Her CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11. The Nomination and Remuneration Committee also recommends her reappointment. I propose that Dr. Mokata, a Director retiring, be re-elected a Director. Will you please complete your electronic voting in accordance with 2.2. 2.3, the fourth item on the agenda, is to re-elect Ms. Bisonoth, who is retiring as Director by virtue of appointment as an addition to the board subsequent to the second annual general meeting in accordance with clause 18 and 19 of the Constitution. Ms. Bisonoth, being eligible and available, offers herself for re-election. Her CV was included in the notice and appears on page 12. The Nomination and Remuneration Committee has considered the reappointment and recommends it. I propose that Ms. Bisonoth, the Director retired, be elected as a Director. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect of Ordinary Resolution 2.3. Ordinary Resolution 2.4, the fifth item on the agenda, is to elect Ms. Mikadameng, who is retiring as Director by virtue of appointment as an addition to the board subsequent to the second annual general meeting. Ms. Nkadimeng, being eligible and available, offers herself for re-election as director. Her CV was included on page 12 of the notice, and the Nomination and Remuneration Committee has considered the reappointment and recommends it. I propose that Ms. Nkadimeng, a director retiring, be re-elected a director. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution 2.4? Ordinary resolution 3.1, which is the 6th item on the agenda, is to elect Dr. Mukata, director, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee with effect from the end of this meeting. The doctor's CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11. I propose that Dr. Mukata be appointed as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee. Will you now please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution 3.1. 3.2 is the 7th item on the agenda, and it's to elect Mr. C. Masipa, a director, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee with effect from the end of this meeting. Mr. Masipa's CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11 of the notice. I propose that Mr. Masipa be appointed as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect to resolution 3.2. 3.3 is to elect Mr. Kurumji, a director, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee with effect from the end of this meeting. Mr. Kurumji's CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11. I propose that Mr. Kurumji, director, be appointed as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution 3.3. Ordinary resolution 3.4 is to elect Ms. Biswanath, a director, as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee with effect from the end of this meeting. Ms. Biswanath's CV was included in the notice and appears on page 11. I propose that she be appointed as a member of the Audit and Risk Committee. Will you now please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution 3.4. Ordinary resolution 4.1, which is the 10th item on the agenda, is to reappoint PricewaterhouseCoopers, Inc. as an auditor of the company, and Mr. Vincent as the individual registered auditor and partner who will undertake the audit of the company in relation to its JSE regulatory matters for the financial year ending 30 June 2021 and until conclusion of the next AGM. The Audit and Risk Committee has considered this appointment and recommends the reappointment of PricewaterhouseCoopers. I propose that PricewaterhouseCoopers Inc. be appointed as an auditor of the company and their designated partner, Mr. Vincent, until the following annual general meeting. Will you please now complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution number 4.1. Ordinary resolution 4.2 is to reappoint PricewaterhouseCoopers as auditor of the company and Mr. John Lee Hao Cheong as the individual registered auditor and partner who will undertake the audit of the company in relation to its Mauritian regulatory matters for the financial year ending 30 June 2021 and until completion of the next AGM. I propose that PricewaterhouseCoopers be appointed as auditor and the designated partner, Mr. John Lee Hao Cheong, until the following AGM. Please will you complete your voting in respect of ordinary resolution 4.2. Ordinary resolution 5, the 12th item on this agenda, is to authorize the board to allot and issue A ordinary shares for cash. The board of the company, in compliance with paragraph 5.52 of the listings requirements read with the Mauritius Companies Act 2001B, and is hereby authorized to issue A ordinary shares of up to a maximum of 5%, being 52,252,386 of the issued A ordinary shares for cash or options in respect of A ordinary shares or securities convertible into A ordinary shares, subject to provisions of the Mauritius Companies Act, the Constitution, and the listings requirements as applicable, and the limitations mentioned in the AGM notice. I therefore propose that the board be authorized to allot and issue A ordinary shares for cash. Will you now please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution 5. Ordinary resolution 6 is the endorsement of the non-binding advisory vote on the company's remuneration policy. The company's remuneration policy is set out in the remuneration report contained on pages 102 to 104 of the integrated annual report. I propose that the company's remuneration policy be endorsed through a non-binding advisory vote. Will you please now complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution number 6. Ordinary resolution number 7 is the endorsement of the non-binding advisory vote on the company's remuneration implementation report. The company's remuneration implementation report is set out on pages 104 to 5 of the integrated annual report. I propose that the company's remuneration implementation report be endorsed through a non-binding advisory vote. Will you please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution number 7. The last ordinary resolution number 8, the 15th item on the agenda, is the approval of non-executive directors' remuneration. The remuneration payable to the non-executive directors is set out on page 6 of the integrated annual report. I propose that the non-executive directors' remuneration be approved. Will you now please complete your electronic voting in respect of ordinary resolution number 8. Special resolution number 1, the final item on the for approval, is the general authority to repurchase shares in the company. As contemplated in paragraph 5.72 of the listing requirements read with the Mauritius Company Act 2001 by way of general authority, that the company may repurchase the company's securities upon such terms and conditions and in such amounts as the board may from time to time decide in their discretion, but subject to the Constitution, the applicable provisions of the Mauritius Companies Act 2001 and the listing requirements, each as presently constituted and as amended from time to time. I therefore propose that the company be authorized to repurchase the company's shares. Will you now please complete your electronic voting in respect of special resolution number 1. All right, now that we have dealt with all of the resolutions, we provide opportunity to deal with any of the questions which you may have raised via the electronic platform. As soon as we've done with responding to your questions, we will share with you the results of the poll. I'll read out the questions or comments made and direct them to the relevant member of the executive to respond. Kabela, have you got any questions? All right, so the first question is from Niall Brown, and it relates to the buyback of shares since the recent rights issue. And the question is, have you bought back any shares since the recent rights issue? And do you intend to make use of the authority to buy back up to 10% of issued shares in any meaningful way over the next 12 months? It would make a lot of sense, particularly while they are trading at the current extremely wide discount to NAV. Johan, can I give that question to you to answer?
Which Johan are you referring to?
Funzel or Fundamova, I don't mind either.
Okay, Chairman, as we've discussed many times, some of the best investments we can actually make involves an investment into African Rainbow Capital Investments. We've just gone through a fairly detailed, as you've said, valuation process, and we trade at a substantial discount to that. So following the capital raise, we have been in the market buying up some shares, and we did acquire some of the volume that trade in the ARC fund. Now, this is not a typical buyback, but it's a new investment into ARC investments. So it is not your normal sort of buyback that you get, although all the existing shareholders would benefit, as it is an investment by the fund into the business.
And Johan, in relation to the quantum, mentioned by Niall. Do you have any, can you provide shareholders with any view on the quantum?
Yes, the quantum is just over 1%. In fact, just over 2% of the shares were bought back. If I look at the buyback till Friday, a big chunk of it came essentially from an investor that wanted to exit, that contacted us, and we bought that at the prevailing market price. For the rest, we don't drive the price. We only go to a higher level if there has been substantial trading already at that level. And for the rest, we simply buy some minority portion of the shares every day, not to fall foul of manipulating prices and that, but we do provide a solid, I would say, floor price into the market.
Fine. Now, does that cover your question adequately?
We haven't received any other questions, Chair.
Okay, can I give it a minute or two for any other questions before I move on to the results of the resolutions?
Certainly.
Okay, so Johan van Zyl, Niall Brown has asked whether you would be happy to go up to 10% in terms of the buyback of shares and the mode of buyback that you have indicated.
Yes, in the capital raise, we've actually indicated that, this is part of the money that we would like to invest. And as I've said, this is by far and by a long shot the sort of best investment that we can make. It also doesn't require additional infrastructure and additional costs in the business. We already invested in the shares. We have a very good view of it. We're covering them properly. And therefore, we think sort of a 10% would be great. It all depends, of course, on what happens to the price. But if the price is at the existing levels, to us, it's a relative no-brainer.
All right. Now, I'll give you a couple of minutes to indicate whether that sufficiently answers your question or not. Okay, Johan Niall has indicated that he's satisfied with that response. So I'll just give other participants another minute or so to ask any more questions before I move on.
I think, Mark, while people are thinking about what to ask, maybe just a little bit of clarity on the investment. This is not a normal buyback, and although we ask for authority to buy back shares, this is not ARC Investments in itself that does the buyback, for which we had shareholder approval from the previous AGM, and we're asking that approval again. This is a new investment by the ARC Fund into the shares of ARC Investments.
Yeah.
I think people have to understand that differentiation there.
But I think, as you say, Johan, it does benefit all shareholders in the same way.
exactly the same way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't put us in a position where we can cancel shares. Usually the way in which people get the benefit from a share buyback is that you cancel the shares, and the sort of the dividends and the proceeds that you actually get from running the business then are divided by fewer shares, so the share price actually goes up. In this instance, there's a similar sort of a calculation, but it comes via the investment, not through the cancellation.
Yeah. I suppose that would be even more relevant if we were a dividend-paying company, which we're not at this stage.
Yes, but since our major metric is actually the NAV and the increase in NAV, or the change in NAV from one reporting period to another, this is what we're trying to optimize. It would have been more relevant that we get and that we pay dividends, but it's as relevant in the calculation of the NAV.
The NAV per share. Yeah. All right. Since there are no other questions, I'm going to close the voting, and based on the results of the poll, I declare that all the ordinary and special resolutions have been passed by the requisite majority. That should now be on your screen. Let's just check here. Yep, that is correct. And as a result, all the business on the agenda has been dealt with, and I declare the meeting closed, and I thank you all for your attendance.